All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce myself real quick before I share my screen. My name is Kayla Carr, and I'm the grants coordinator here at the Greater Columbus Arts Council. As I said, recording is in progress, so let's hold on to any questions until we pause for those in the middle of this presentation and also at the end of the presentation. Artist Projects is one of my favorite programs to talk about, so I'm super excited to share some more information with you all. And as I share my screen here, if I could just get some thumbs up from you, that way I know that you can see what I see. Good? Cool. Awesome. Thank you. All right, so let's get started. Maybe you're new to GCAC, maybe you're new just to this program specifically, or maybe you're familiar with some of our past programs like Neighborhood Arts Connection, Big Ideas, and even project support for organizations. Artist Projects was inspired by and created from those grants, alongside community conversations and roundtables. So we heard a lot about how there was a desire for more collaboration and larger awards, even if that meant a more competitive process. Sorry, I gotta mute my office phone real quick. Um, and starting in 2024, individuals were no longer eligible for project support, and that program is now only open to 501c3 nonprofit arts organizations based in Franklin County. So in response to that change, Artist Projects was born and is now the program where individual artists and or groups of artists can apply without the requirement of a nonprofit serving as a fiscal sponsor. So if you're attending this workshop on behalf of a nonprofit organization, it's best to head over to the project support guidelines, as that program is currently in an open cycle as well, with an upcoming deadline of February 17th. Sometimes folks can get this project confused with that one since they both have project in the name. So I just want to be clear that everyone applying for this should be an individual. And, basically our hope here is that Artist Projects encourages more networking as well as collaboration and opportunities for artists to make their dream projects come to fruition. To start off, let's talk about our current funding landscape. We are transparent about this because it does impact some of the eligibility criteria for our grant programs, such as this one. GCAC itself receives funding through annual contracts with the city. In the past, Franklin County, the state of Ohio, the Ohio State University, local foundations, and more. However, our annual grant-making budget is dependent on the City of Columbus bed tax and admission tax revenues, as well as Franklin County funding. But unfortunately, some of you may have seen last year, due to changing economic factors, we have had to implement a more conservative approach to our funding, just to navigate some of that uncertainty. This simply means that grant amounts for most of our programs will be lower than last year. But the good news is that the award amounts for artist projects have remained the same, and approximately 75 artists and up to 10 filmmakers are expected to be awarded in 2026. So since the program's debut in 2024, this program has funded a total of $1,697,985 to 145 artists and filmmakers. This is our website, so whenever you're sharing information about GCAC and our grant programs, we always recommend to start with the guidelines first. So you'll head over to gcac.org. This is what the homepage looks like. If the main image is different, don't worry, you're still in the right place, because it does cycle through to a fresh image each time you visit the website. So we're going to look for 4 artists at the top of the page, or underneath that tagline there, and we're going to click on that to select funding for artists from a drop-down menu. You'll also see circled at the top right that the GCAC calendar is available, and this is where you can see important dates like grant deadlines and also our public workshops. So after clicking on For Artists at the top of the page, this is that drop-down menu that will appear. On the left, you can find upcoming and recorded workshops. There's a range of topics from drafting your artist statement to taxes for artists to workshops like this one where we go into the program details. Underneath that, you'll see studios and spaces. This is a great resource if you're looking to host an event or an exhibition, or maybe your artist project by chance. This page hosts various community spaces and businesses that are available for rent, and you can also see available amenities and contact information for each listing. On the right, you'll see opportunities for artists. That's a great way to find local job postings, calls for exhibitions, and even external residency and grant funding opportunities. I myself am an artist, and before working at GCAC, I often frequented this Opportunities for Artists page. We do try our best to keep it as current and up to date as possible. So additionally, if you have a job posting or a board opportunity or things of that nature, we can also accept submissions via an online form to be listed there on that page. And so to move forward to our funding guidelines, let's just go ahead and click on the circled funding for artists at the top right. Once you click on Funding for Artists, it will take you to a page with all 2026 programs for individuals. This is including awards, fellowships, grants, and residencies offered by GCAC. Some of those programs are specific when it comes to applicant eligibility. Artist Projects, since it's the very first program that opened this year, it's going to be at the top of the list. And all of those programs are shown in order from which they open to accept applications. We also have several programs that are in partnership with the Columbus Museum of Art, like the Amina program and also our Visual Arts Fellowship program. Artist Projects opened this past Monday, February 9th. And if we click on the program name where it's circled, we will see a summarized description of the program. Here, you will be able to see a short summary detailing the grant's purpose, who the grant is open to, the award amount, how applications are evaluated, and also the important deadlines for the program. Artist Projects will have 2 rounds this year, so you'll see both of those deadlines listed from this summary. This is a really good way to kind of just shop through opportunities. You can click on each program tab without actually having to open up the full extensive guidelines. And once you've selected one, of course, in this instance, Artist Projects is what we're interested in applying for, you'll just click on Full Details at the bottom left to open up the complete guidelines. I have also linked the guidelines in our meeting chat today, if that's easier for you and you want to follow along with the workshop. And then if you're old school and you want to work with pen and paper, you can also download a PDF of the guidelines. The formatting may look a little different just coming from our website, but all the information will still be there. So once you're here, this is what happens after you click on Full Details. This is all of the information regarding Artist Projects. So that includes eligibility criteria for both the applicant and the project, the staff contact, that's me, and then the link to Smart Simple, which is our online application portal. The application portal will always appear as like a bronze colored button on our website. And the guidelines will also include application questions in entirety, as well as a public scoring rubric, a detailed timeline, as well as information on next steps after acceptance, payment, and final reports. You will also see at the top of the guidelines for each program that there is a box that details our current funding situation. As mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, while award amounts are mostly lower than last year, Artist Projects has remained the same. And in 2026, approximately 75 artists and up to 10 filmmakers will be awarded. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of Artist Projects. This is just to summarize the grant. The purpose of this grant is simply to support artistic creation in all disciplines and bring original, artist-led projects to life within the city of Columbus. So those disciplines include film, fashion, literary and visual arts, dance, music, and theater. Artists working in multiple disciplines are also eligible to apply. And so from start to finish, projects must be led by the applicant. Artists will wear many hats in this program, from the project's original concept, selection of artists involved, creation of the artwork itself, disseminating to the public, marketing the project, and submitting contracts and reports. The applicant must be an individual working artist as demonstrated by a resume or artistic portfolio or a collection of work. Groups are welcome to apply, but we need one individual to apply on behalf of the group. So I simply say whoever is best at communication and checking their emails, just to make sure you don't miss any notifications from us, and that all things stay on track. And lastly, this grant is very competitive. It will be reviewed and scored by the public as part of a community grant making process, which is fairly new to GCAC, and we will touch more on that in following slides. I do want to talk real quick about what artist-led means to GCAC. Essentially, an artist-led project is one in which the artist initiates, conceptualizes, plans, and executes the entire project, either independently or collaboratively, outside of traditional or institutional frameworks. So an artist-led project is number one, initiated by the artist. You hold the original idea or the concept. Number two, it's controlled by the artist. So you as the artist have final say on all creative decisions. And lastly, it's branded as the artist. So this project should be branded under your name and not a business or a client or a nonprofit. GCAC's goal is simply to ensure that artists have full creative freedom, and that artists are the ones defining the goals and outcomes of these projects. So if you're an artist submitting a project in response to a gallery or organization's open call or invitation to exhibit, this would not be considered artist-led, as that exhibition is part of the gallery or nonprofit's programming season. So ineligible projects are typically externally initiated, and the opportunity is dependent on that venue, business, event producer, or organization. These projects are typically bound by like curatorial direction or structured programming. And additionally, any work funded by artist projects cannot overlap with organizations that receive operating support, general support, or project support. So this includes most arts nonprofits in our region. You may still partner with an arts nonprofit as long as the event is not a part of their programming. So, maybe they're offering you their space, or maybe it's just a fiscal sponsorship, but the project itself does not become theirs. Moving on to the award amount. You're going to hear me say this a lot in this presentation. Multiple awards are going to be given out to artists at amounts up to $10,000. Filmmakers, however, will request up to $25,000. Please note that we do have a larger budget for filmmakers simply because we recognize the project budget and equipment needed to produce a film can sometimes be a lot more expensive in comparison to other disciplines. So a film typically also has a larger amount of people working on the production. However, filmmakers, you do not have to request the max amount if you have a smaller project budget. If you're a filmmaker with a budget over $25,000, you will be asked to include in your application budget additional sources of income. This just helps us see that, you have investment in the project and that it can happen, realistically according to your project timeline and project plans. And then the funds can be used for a wide array of things. That's including artist fees. That's to pay yourself as the project lead, or maybe you're paying other artists involved in the project. Hopefully you are paying both, and then also materials, supplies, space rentals, insurance, lifts, ladders, projectors, marketing, print materials, you name it. Realistically, it can be anything you need in order to make the project happen. So you'll include that in your budget and you're going to estimate those costs based on your project research. And then in the budget section of your application, you will also enter a line for each income source. However, it is not a requirement to have an income source outside of grant funding. Any income generated from, maybe ticket or merchandise sales, sponsorships, donations, things like that, we do want to see how that is being invested back into your project budget. So projects should not be profit generating. It's okay if you do make some money, but the goal here should not be to start a booming business and things like that. We just want to see that artists are being paid and that these are projects that you want to put on. And you'll account for all of that within your final report as well when we compare your anticipated costs to your actual costs. And same thing as mentioned with filmmakers earlier, if you are an artist working a discipline outside of film, if your budget is larger than that max $10,000 request, you will also be asked to detail additional sources of income. And then moving on to eligibility, this is who is eligible to apply, and that is individual artists such as yourselves, or groups of artists. But what we don't want to see is an artist applying on behalf of a business or nonprofit. Once again, please see project support if that sounds more like you. And then additionally, you must also be a working artist, aged 18 and older, and you must live in the city of Columbus or Franklin County. Bordering counties are no longer eligible, and this ties back to our loss in Franklin County funding. We have had to make some really tough decisions regarding applicant eligibility. So if you reside in a bordering county, I do encourage you to make connections with a local artist to Columbus or Franklin County, and possibly you could apply as a group. However, the individual with eligible residency will be who applies, but they can still list you as a group member and include your payment within their project budget. Lastly, you unfortunately cannot be a degree-seeking undergraduate student. Graduate students are okay to apply, but what we don't want to see is like a thesis project or, work in relation to your degree, as that is reliant again on an external institution rather than something you're leading on your own time. So if you're an undergraduate student through round one, maybe you graduate this spring and then you can apply in round two. That's actually a great way to participate as a community reviewer. That way you can gain experience and knowledge on writing applications and also reviewing and evaluating them as well. And you can only be awarded once per year per program. So if you're awarded in round one, you cannot turn around and reapply in round two. And then past artist projects grantees, please note there at the bottom that you must have completed your initial project and submit your final report ahead of submitting a new application. Additionally, we cannot fund the same project twice. It must be a brand new project or an evolution of a past project. So evolution meaning there is some sort of change to what you were initially funded for. Maybe it's the same concept, but you're hiring different artists or it takes place somewhere else, things like that. If you have applied in the past and were declined and you wish to apply again for the same project, please contact me and we can roll over your application. That way you're not starting from scratch. You'll just need to make necessary updates and then resubmit when you're ready. So eligibility in terms of your project, what types of projects can you apply for? There are three key components to an eligible project, that being location, payment, and a defined end result. Eligible projects may look like performances, exhibitions, installations, festivals, locally produced films and TV series, published works, records, art experiences, and in general, community events where arts are at the core of the project. So please note that the end result does not have to be a large event, and artists are encouraged to conclude their project in a way that makes sense for the public to experience their work. If you are a literary artist, that can simply be the publishing of your book. You do not have to have a book signing or a book festival or things like that. It can simply be that the public can go buy your book off a shelf somewhere. Eligible projects are also created and led by an artist or group of artists, of course, that involve the creation of art and meet the following criteria. Number one is Columbus. Your project must take place in Columbus. We do expect some of these projects to be shared far and wide, like an album or a film screening. However, it is that end result that the public will experience that must take place in Columbus. So you may use the funds to travel your project or to tour, so long as a majority of the grant is being spent on and dedicated to Columbus-based production, that's totally okay. We've had musicians in the past that want to go to New York to record an album. You know, we're not going to take away that resource, but if it takes up 90% of your budget, then that's not dedication to Columbus-based production. What's important is to ask yourself, how am I uplifting my own local artistic community? And remember that these funds do come from public dollars, so please encourage folks to think about how they can involve artists and collaborators, organizations and businesses local to Columbus. And then when a project takes place in Columbus, oftentimes it also generates patronage to surrounding restaurants, businesses, and more. This just helps show our public funders how the arts contribute to the overall ecosystem of Columbus, increasing foot traffic, turning spaces into destinations, benefiting the broader workforce, and also helping the city stand out, not only as a creative place to visit, but to live. Second, this is payment. The following questions fall under this category. Is this a solo project? Are you going to be paying yourself? How many local artists are being paid and engaging in the project? Or how many artists will be paid total? Keep in mind that additional sources of income are not a requirement, and GCAC can fully fund your project. Awards will be given at all or nothing, so no changes will be made upon approval. So the amount that you request is the amount that you get. We're not going to do any different calculations based on scoring. It's going to be all or nothing. And then when we go to review your budget, we're also going to ensure that somewhere in there is a designated payment to artists involved. Again, that can simply be yourself as the project lead and or payment to other artists creating work for the project itself. I'm going to speak from personal experience here, but I think that a lot of artists may really miss the point to pay themselves for their time because sometimes we really just want to see a project happen. You know, maybe in a lot of instances, we're willing to lessen our rate or bypass payment altogether or put it on a credit card. I strongly encourage artists to pay themselves for their time on these projects. So you can establish that rate via your research, but, you know, unfortunately, I cannot make a suggested payment amount simply because what works for one artist might not work for another. So we do encourage industry standard payment amounts as relative to your budget. And if you have a smaller budget, that may simply look like an artist stipend. And then the third is that defined end result. This part we left intentionally broad, and really the only requirement is that the project must end with art that the public can experience and digest. Once again, this does not have to be a large-scale event, though we do get many applications tied to large events. But it's not a requirement. There has been some confusion about that in the past, so I just really want to emphasize that that defined end result can look like a bunch of different things. It should really just make sense for whatever suits your project best, and that can take shape in the form of an installation or a festival, a recording, or just some fun art experience. So just as you're writing your application, you know, think about what might be the most compelling version of the end result. You know, reviewers will be selecting projects based on what they personally want to experience. So ask yourself what you would want to see as a member of the public, as an arts appreciator, as someone who's also in this same arts community. So as an applicant, I want you to ask yourself things like, why this project right now in Columbus? Who does this project serve? Whose story is being told? And does my project demonstrate artistic, community, and/or cultural value? Here is the timeline. Please write this down or add it to your calendars. It's very important to make it by the March 16th deadline. The grant cycle is open for 1 month, so you're encouraged to start early so you can work to complete your application, and that way you have time to ask any questions or get some clarity on any confusion. I personally won't be hosting draft reviews or one-on-one sessions now that we're in an open cycle, simply because we receive way too many applications and I'm just one person. However, a recording of this workshop will be posted later this week on our website. I will also be hosting 3 in-person grant application writing sessions on 3 different dates throughout the rest of February and early March. And I'll have that info at the end of this presentation, and it's also currently on our workshops page if you want to RSVP ahead of time. And not shown here in the application, oops, my bad, not shown here in the application timeline, but our community review day will be on May 9th. And again, more information is going to come in the next following slides. But following community review day, applicants will be notified no later than May 29th, 2026. So awardees will have until July 31st, 2027 to complete their projects, and their final report will be due 30 days following their project end date, as noted in their application. So please keep in mind that after artists have been notified, we will need you to first sign a contractual grant agreement before we can process your payment. So since you won't be awarded till May 29th, the earliest your project can start is June 1st. However, you might not receive payment until July 1st or so. It really just depends on when you get into the system, when you sign that contract, and when we can process your payment. So it can take up to 4 weeks, and you should be accounting for that within your project's timeline. If anything changes throughout the process, please reach out to me or grants@gcac.org. We do accept tentative plans, so if your project dates change, or if there's any major changes in general to your budget or to your project timeline, we do appreciate being notified as soon as possible, just so that we can stay in the loop and be able to accurately reference your application when we go to review your final report. And additionally, since projects are reviewed by the community, projects should not differ too far from the initial proposal. I do understand that things can change over the course of a year, but please try and keep projects aligned with its original theme, concept, and overall nature of the project. Essentially, we are granting you the funding to complete this very specific project, not just any project. So, you think about it, you go to the movie theater, you watch a trailer, you expect to see that movie. It's the same thing with community review process. Folks are looking at this application and they expect to see that end result that you initially proposed. So I don't want to open up a final report and be like, what is this? So just try and communicate any changes that happen. It's totally okay if things evolve as long as it makes sense. And I'm going to pause here just for some questions. If anyone has them, we can take a couple minutes to go over those. Does anyone have any questions about eligibility, or if your project makes sense or anything like that? After this, we will walk through the application in our portal. And you can just type that in the chat, or you can come off mute and ask.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If you're submitting a film and the artist submitting a film, one of the ways that they submit the film, they actually have like their own production company. So you said not doing it with a business, but their art form is film production. Is that similar or different? Or do you mean just like a business that's not aligned with artistry? Can you?
Yeah. So we still want to make sure that it's the filmmaker's project, but it's okay if they're legally tied to an LLC. We can collect that EIN and issue payment to their business. That's totally fine. But it shouldn't be like this is GCAC's project. It should be this is Kayla's project kind of thing. So as long as it's clear in branding and things like that, it's okay to say, the film production company name and things like that, but it should be clearly an artist rather than a business producing it. All right, I see a question here in the chat. How elaborate does it have to be? Could a single painting count? How elaborate does what have to be? Your application or the project? Yes, the second round will be, 75 artists and 10 filmmakers over the course of 2 rounds, but the award amounts will be the same in round 2, Mike. Um, the project, that's totally up to you. A single painting could be extremely compelling, or a reviewer might see that and say that they want more. It really just depends on how structure your project. I would say that, if it's just one painting, then the public's going to come and just see one piece of art, or is it going to be part of a larger exhibition where maybe you just create one painting and others create paintings to be included? Um, I would stress that applications should be elaborated on just so that they're not marked as incomplete as well. But Darius, if you have any questions about your application, feel free to email me and we can talk over that. Yes, there is a City of Columbus zoning map that I linked earlier in the chat. I'll go ahead and send it again. This is a great way to just double check that your venue or that your space is located within Columbus. I also linked the Franklin County zoning map up above if you need to track your residency. Just a reminder that you're totally fine. Just a reminder that bordering counties are no longer eligible. So if you just want to double check your residency there, you can use the Franklin County zoning map. All right, I'm going to go on to the application process and then we'll pause again for questions at the end of the presentation. But those are all great questions. If anyone needs a more elaborated on answer, just feel free to follow up with me after this workshop. All right, so gcac.smartsimple.com, that is our application portal. And you can find a link to this portal via the guidelines. It will be directly under the staff contact information, and you'll just look once again for that bronze brown colored button. The application portal is a different website than our website, so you'll want to make sure that you're not trying to start the application from gcac.org. It should simply be gcac.smartsimple.com. And then this is what the homepage of the application portal will look like. It's where you will apply for any and every grant that we offer. So if you've received a Funds for Artists grant from us before, or a mural grant or something like that, you should already have a login. If you're new to the portal, you will need to register and make a new account. You can do so by clicking register here down at the bottom right. And if you forget your password, just click on forgot password and it'll prompt an email with instructions be sent to you. And once again, Artist Projects is only open to individuals. So if you're new and you click register here, it will ask you if you're an individual, a business, or a nonprofit. Make sure you click on individual because the funding opportunities that will show on your dashboard will be different depending on how you sign up in the system. Once you've logged in, this is what your dashboard will look like. From this page, you can also change your password, you can update your profile information, you can fill out contracts and reports, and more. Click on your initial, the circled K at the top right, for example, and that will show you a drop-down menu where you can change your password as well. Upon logging into the system, please make sure that your information is correct by navigating to where it says profile requires updating. That's circled there at the top left. If this section is not updated, then the system will actually prevent you from starting a new application. So when I'm looking at the portal from, an internal side, if I need to contact you, I'm going to go off of what you have saved in your profile. And if that information is not accurate, there's a chance that you'll miss those communications. And this means your name, preferred pronouns, artistic disciplines, emails, phones, all of that should be up to date. To access the artist projects application, you will see like a little acorn icon circled there in the middle right. Next to it, it'll say grant and fellowship opportunities. You're going to click on that to open up applications that are currently in an open cycle. Right now, the only open cycle out there is artist projects, so it shouldn't be hard to find. Let's just go ahead and click on that, and a pop-out window will appear. So to begin your application, you'll click on Apply Now next to Artist Projects. You'll also see the deadline listed as well as a link to full guidelines. If you happen to receive this alert, it's because you've already started an application for the program, or if you were awarded in the past, we may be missing a final report from you. So to exit out of this, just click OK. And then if you know you have an application started, it will appear underneath applications/forms in progress. Then once you've exited out of that alert page, you'll scroll down to applications in progress and you'll click open to continue working. And then once you come across this screen, this is how you know you're at the start of the application. Notice at the top left, it has my name. In this case, it's my test profile. It will only say new application until you click on save draft. So saving draft just, starts the application in your name, and you'll also continue to save draft as you work on filling out the application itself. It's super easy to lose progress on your application if you do not click Save Draft and you move through each tab, or if you have the portal open in multiple tabs, it can get a little confused. It is called Smart Simple, though it is neither smart or simple. So all of the application questions are currently on our website within the Artist Projects guidelines, and I encourage you to have the guidelines pulled up as you move through the application in the portal. If you want to start working on your application outside of the portal, you can simply do so by keeping answers in a separate Word document, and then you can just copy and paste those answers into the system. And that's also a great way to just ensure that your work is backed up as well. And if you're awarded, you can continue to keep notes in that document as well. So just a quick tip, Smart Simple is best accessible via laptop or desktop computer rather than by a phone or tablet. The system just doesn't really look right when it's on a smaller screen. So if you don't have access to a reliable computer, please reach out to grants@gcac.org to schedule a time and come use our computer room. We have a first come, first served computer available, and I can help walk you through the process. We also have a printer and a scanner here, so if you need any of that, just let us know and we can find some time for you. The application questions, it's pretty lengthy. The first one that we ask is the title of your project, and then we also ask for a short project description that is no more than 50 words, and this will be shared publicly if you are awarded. So we do issue a press release once awardees are announced or once awardees are notified. And in that press release, it'll have your name, your preferred name, your project title, and also that short project description. And that just helps people see, what we funded and what they have to look forward to. We'll ask for your project start date, a reminder that this should indicate when GCAC funding is to be implemented. So payment processing may take up to 4 weeks from your award notification date. And project start dates that are prior to that date, which is June 1st, 2026 for round one, that'll be considered a reimbursement and therefore ineligible. So anything in your budget, that should only happen after June 1st, 2026. And then same thing with the project end date. You must complete your project by July 31st, 2027. And then we also ask if you're applying as a filmmaker. You can say yes or no. And then applicants of all disciplines may request up to 10,000 and filmmakers may request up to 25,000. That is what you'll put in your grant request amount. Just a reminder that you don't have to request the max award if it doesn't make sense for your project, but the system will prevent you from going over those amounts if you happen to request more than what's allotted. And then we're also going to ask you, is this a solo project? Remember, projects can be solo or group projects, as long as one person is applying on behalf of the group. We're going to ask you how many local artists are going to be paid. And then we're going to ask you to just tell us about the project. This is, for you to explain a rough timeline, for you to explain any planning, and also for you to talk about why you're excited about this project. Just keep in mind that if it's a continuing project, there must be a clear update or evolution of the work. It should be a new version of something you've previously done. And then we're also going to ask how this project aligns with GCAC's Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Statement. We're going to ask, who are you engaging with as a part of the project? That's other artists, venues, spaces, community members, nonprofit partners, collaborators, or local businesses. And then we'll ask, what is innovative about your idea and what makes you excited? And also, what is the end result expected at the completion of the project? This is, how will the public experience your work? And the last question is, what experience do you have leading this type of project? So you don't see them all here on this screenshot, but just keep scrolling and they're all going to be listed there according to the guidelines. Once you get to the budget tab, please look out for the gray instructional boxes. These are going to help guide you as you enter budget information. You're going to click on the brown button that says add/update budget. And you should be thinking about all of your costs related to your project from start to finish. So think about any venue rentals, marketing costs, print materials, contractors, insurance, supplies, artist fees, things like that. And again, if your project budget surpasses the max award amount, then the applicant will be asked to note additional funding sources in this section. After you've clicked on the brown add/update budget button, this is what the pop-out budget window will look like. You will add a line item by clicking the plus button for each expense. So costs should be estimated based on your research. And if your project will generate income, such as ticket or merch sales, you will enter a line for each income source as well. Again, not a requirement that you have one outside of grant funds, so long as you're within that 10,000 or 25,000 amount. And again, if it goes over that, this is where you will identify additional sources of income. And then if you are awarded, we also highly encourage you to track your spending via a Word document or a spreadsheet. However, you will not be required to keep receipts. And then this is where you will enter your income or your revenue. Just as an example here, I've put in a private donor. And so let's say I get $10,000, then that donor is going to turn around and give me $10,000. So that just helps us to see that, there's other investments made into your project and that this project can happen even if GCAC funding does not cover the entire budget. In the upload section, you will provide your artist resume. Please ensure that this is in PDF format only. Smart Simple will actually not accept any other file format in this application. And you'll also be required to upload work samples, and we have those work samples listed by discipline. So including additional materials that may support your application is optional. This can look like links to other websites, other materials, past project photos, publicity articles. Maybe you want to share your artist statement or letters of support from your partners, or any additional project plans that we don't explicitly ask for. We don't want to see like a full script of a film, but if you have like a teaser trailer or just, a small taste of what you're trying to put together, this is typically where we see those things added. Files should be short and sweet. So grant reviewers will be looking at multiple applications. We don't want them to be spending more than 5 or 10 minutes on an application. So we don't want to fatigue anyone, and we want to be mindful of their review time. So, you want to be elaborate and precise, but you don't want to, go too far where you're kind of talking about things that don't necessarily need to be said. And it's kind of hard to explain in that part because you just kind of have to suss out your project in general. But I think a good way to get some feedback on your writing is to hand it off to someone who's unfamiliar with your work or unfamiliar with your project and just kind of see what questions come up for them. Because half the time that's the same kind of question that's going to come up for me or come up for a community reviewer. And filmmakers, if you're sharing a trailer or something in video format, you will include that as an active link within your uploaded PDF. And you'll want to make sure that any external links are not password protected so that our reviewers can gain access. In 2024, we had some uploads that consisted of like 80 plus page PDFs. These files are too long for our reviewers to evaluate, which is why we ask for a high-level shares only and to keep it short and sweet. You may upload a pitch deck or a flip book, outside links to a Vimeo trailer, things like that are totally acceptable. But what we don't want to see is a full-length description of work that may be unrelated to the project you're pitching. This is what that optional upload section will look like. This is where you can include those additional materials. Again, this is PDF format only, and links, images, or written content are to be added directly within the PDF. Excessive length files will be automatically disqualified, so try not to put too much work into these optional materials because it's the meat of the application that we're going to be looking at. And once you're finished with your application, the last step is the certification tab. This is where you will read all the info, tick all the boxes, and then click on Submit Application when ready. This page simply just certifies that you are a resident of Franklin County or Columbus, that you're not a high school or degree-seeking undergraduate student, and that you understand that this grant is considered taxable income. So additionally, we do ask you how you prefer awarded funding be distributed. If you use your individual banking account, you will provide your social security number. And if you're using an LLC, this is where we will issue to an EIN number. This is for 1099 tax purposes. So also using a fiscal sponsor may have some limited tax responsibilities, but it's recommended that you contact a tax advisor to discuss tax implications related to any grant or award provided by GCAC. This is true for all of our grant programs. If you receive 600 or more from GCAC, you will be mailed a 1099 for that following tax season. And if you happen to accidentally submit your application before you're done working, you will have to reach out to me or grants@gcac.org just so I can go in and reset it to draft status for you. Artists are responsible for submitting their applications, and we cannot accept submissions outside of the portal via email or if they're late. So if you submit after 5 p.m. on March 16th, I'm off at 5 p.m. and I'm not going to be here to help with any questions or technical difficulties. So please try to get those things in ahead of time, just so that I don't have to decline you simply for being late. I understand if you run into a tech issue and your application is like 99% completed, I may be able to make an exception in that sense. But if you're logging in right at 4:55 p.m. and start working, unfortunately, I can't do much for you at that point. And then if you want to note something within your application, you can come to the left-hand side and select Notes. This is where you will click the plus sign button where it says New Note. And then underneath Type, simply select Note to Council or Application Notes. Application notes are mostly used to leave notes for anyone else working on your application. This is more common for organizations who might be working with a grant writer rather than an individual. And then leaving a note to council will contact grant staff. So you can also just email us if that's easier. But once you leave your note, you'll want to ensure to click save at the bottom just so that we see it. And then after you submit your application, to ensure that proposals meet basic eligibility criteria, applications and supplemental materials will be reviewed by grant staff members. We only screen applications for artist and project eligibility. So that's your project start and end date, that's completeness of your application. It's important to note that, 1 to 2 sentence answers may be seen as incomplete. So the strongest grant applications tend to provide reviewers with a 360-degree description of themselves as an artist, in addition to those detailed project plans. So it shouldn't just be, I'm an artist and I'm going to make a project. We want to have some details in there. We shouldn't be asking, a lot of questions as to what the end result should be. It should be very clear to a reviewer what you're trying to do. And then due to our budget constraints, no more than 90 applicants will be considered in each round. So following the staff review, all eligible applications will be sent to a panel of 30 to 40 arts administrators and leaders to determine those 60 to 90 applications that will be sent on to the community review day. So these initial reviewers will assess applications based on the following questions. Number 1, is the application thorough and well thought out? Will a community reviewer have enough information to make a decision on this project? Number 2, does the application fall under the definition of compelling? Are people going to be excited about this project? Is the artist themselves excited about this project? Number 3, is the project innovative? Does it go beyond the artist's normal practices and opportunities? And number 4, will the artistic end result benefit the community who views, reads, attends, or engages with the art? Community grant making is an evaluation tool that has been used for decades across the globe. We all know that applying for grants can be an intimidating process. So by introducing a community review process, we are shifting those power dynamics that are inherent within institutions and funding environments. So even though GCAC staff trains the community reviewers and guides the logistics, scoring and funding recommendations will come directly from the community and not GCAC staff or board of trustees. We're simply just making sure that your applications are eligible, but we're not making decisions as to what gets funded. Applications that move forward to Community Review Day will be scored out of a total of 40 points. And in the guidelines, you will also find a link to the public scoring rubric as well. This is the same exact rubric that will be printed out on Community Review Day and placed at the seats of those reviewing. And that's 10 points to each of these categories, 0 being the lowest possible score and 10 being the highest, most excellent rating. So out of those 40 points, the first one is a compelling project with arts at the core. So again, that is why this project, why in Columbus, why right now? Does this project demonstrate community, cultural, or artistic value? And is it innovative? And how does it stand out from other projects we've seen before? We'll look at creativity and artistic concept. This is your vision and goals. Do they indicate a commitment to a quality project? Does this project show risk-taking or innovation? Is this a project we've seen before? Are local artists being engaged? And what makes artists excited about this project? It's not necessarily how well does this person draw or perform or sing. It's more so that commitment to producing a quality project. And then evidence of a solid plan for completion. This is where we will look at the project timeline. Is it outlined? Is it realistic? And is it well thought out? We do accept tentative plans, but did you make the effort to research as much as possible? And are we confident in the applicant's ability to carry out the project based on their resume and experience? We will also see that your project budget is reasonable and makes sense for the project altogether. And then lastly, that is that benefit to the public who will engage with the completed project. Is this a broad-reaching benefit to the community who will engage with this art? Is it promoted in the community? And does it align with GCAC's DEI statement? And I'll go ahead and read that statement. It is linked on our website and within the guidelines as well. The Greater Columbus Arts Council's vision is a thriving Columbus where the arts matter to all of us. We recognize to achieve this vision, we must actively work to overcome complex inequities in our community, including racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, classism, ableism, among others. We believe that the arts play an essential role in examining the issues of our time, encouraging thoughtful dialogue, and prompting change as a pathway to equity. So this is not to censor your project, but it is so that you know it must be in line with GCAC's values. And then this is the big day. This is Community Review Day. It's our hope that by extending the review process to those outside of GCAC's funding environment, we will then be able to reach those that are sometimes excluded from traditional academic art and funding institutions. The super cool thing is that virtually anyone can sign up. So maybe you are an artist, maybe you're an advocate for the arts, maybe you're just a volunteer, a supporter, or simply an audience member. All are welcome to help us review applications. Applying artists are also still welcome and encouraged to sign up as grant reviewers. However, you will not be sat at the same table that your application is being scored at, of course. So same thing if you're part of a group that is applying, we will ask in your interest form to be a community reviewer to indicate any conflicts of interest to avoid being sat at that same table as your application or your group's application. And as mentioned, GCAC will train and guide the logistics of the process just so that we can make sure that the day is as smooth sailing as possible. And interest forms are currently being accepted until March 26th. So once interest forms close, selected reviewers will then be sent their applications by April 24th. They will have from then through May 8th to read, evaluate, and score applications from home. This year, Community Review Day will take place on May 9th in person at Columbus State. And each reviewer will come with their homework completed and ready to engage in small groups to discuss each application and reach consensus on a final score. And then to help navigate some bias, each table will also have a mirror table with the same applications. And then from those scores, we take the average, and that's your final score. This QR code just links to our community review process page where you can find a link to the interest form and more frequently asked questions revolving around Community Review Day. Personally, I have been a community grant maker or community grant reviewer with the Women's Fund of Central Ohio and also United Way. And it's just a really great way to see what's going on in your community and help make those decisions. It's a really feel-good event, and you meet a lot of people and you learn a lot of things. So even high school students are welcome to apply if they need service hours and things like that. So after you're awarded, take a moment to pat yourself on the back. This is an extremely competitive program, and being awarded is no small feat. You will receive notice via email regarding award or decline. Reviewer feedback is also available in the notification email. And this is why it's very important to ensure your personal profile information is up to date. I would hate for you to miss a notification, so please remember to check spam or junk folders, as well as add kcar@gcac.org or grants@gcac.org to your contacts list. If awarded, you will have a contract waiting for you in Smart Simple under Contracts to Complete. And we absolutely need the contract signed first in order to pay your grant out. So if working with a fiscal sponsor, you can invite a fiscal sponsor to your contract and they will sign on behalf of the grantee. All fiscal sponsor communications must take place between that organization and the grantee. GCAC is only in contract regarding the grant funding, but not the project tasks itself. So once the contract is signed and approved, payment will be issued, though it may take up to 4 weeks. Artist projects will be awarded around the same time as the Columbus Arts Festival, which is organized by GCAC. So all of our staff members in every single department are in and out of office during this time to help prep, set up, and support the Arts Festival. This includes our finance department, who will also be processing payments to and from exhibiting artists, vendors, food trucks, and more. So please account for payment processing in your project timeline just to ensure there is no issue. And projects can start as early as June 1st, but it's possible you won't receive that first payment until a few weeks after. We always do our best to get payments out in a timely manner, so I just say this to inform you of what we have going on at that time for round one. All grantees are required to submit a final report 30 days following their project end date as listed in their application. Please do not submit the report until your funds have been exhausted and your project has been completed in a way that is accessible to the public. So I will unfortunately have to mark the report incomplete and ask for revisions if you submit the project ahead of its completion. And if you end up needing to extend your project end date, just communicate that to me ahead of your report's deadline. Lastly, there is also a requirement of a publicity or donor acknowledgement. This can simply be a social media posting thanking GCAC on Facebook or Instagram. You can thank public funders via letters or emails to City Council and the Mayor, or you can refer to Appendix A on our website for more information, as well as logos that you can download to include in your postings or in your film credits or in your books and things like that. And one more time, just go ahead and save these dates in your calendars. You can scan the QR code to sign up for our newsletter. Round one opened on February 9th and will close on March 16th by 5 p.m. And then applicants will be notified on or before, that should say May 29th, 2026. And the earliest your project can start is June 1st. Please complete it by July 31st, 2027. And then that final report is 30 days following your project end date. The next workshop that we have offered is February 18th from 12 to 1:30. That is an in-person grant application writing session. Same thing as what we're hosting on February 26th and March 4th. The session will consist of a presentation that's a little bit shorter than this one at the beginning, and then the rest of that time is just going to kind of be like a study hall. So you can bring your laptop, you can bring, whatever you're working on, you can ask questions in real time. And we'll also have some of the GCAC navigators present to help facilitate some of those questions. All of the GCAC navigators have received training on this program specifically, so they should have all the answers in the same way that I do. I don't want anyone to think that I'm the gatekeeper of this grant. I just help manage the program. So feel free to reach out to our navigators, as the goal of the Navigator program is to increase outreach to new artists, especially those from historically marginalized or underrepresented communities. And the main pillars are awareness. This is to introduce new artists to GCAC, who we are and what we're here for. Education, share GCAC resources and opportunities available to artists. Accessibility, increase community knowledge of artist drop-in hours, the computer lab, translation or interpretation services, workshops, and one-on-one coaching. Connection, build trust through meetings, attending events, asking for feedback, listening to the needs of artists, calling and emailing artists to appreciate the work in the community. And then also growth. This is to help increase the number of artists who attend workshops, apply for grants and fellowships, or just connect with GCAC. In response, this is based on Navigator and community artist feedback. It helps staff adapt guidelines, grant programs, workshop offerings, and accessibility plans and inclusion efforts. We do have one navigator in the meeting today, Erica Rodney. Thanks for attending. I hope to see more navigators at our in-person writing sessions. And if you want to connect with thanks for waving, Erica. And if you want to connect with the navigator, you can scan that QR code or visit gcac.org/about/GCAC navigators. Navigators work in various disciplines as well, and their disciplines as well as contact information is listed on that page. So if you want to connect with someone, that's a great way to do so. And that is all I have for you today. If you have any questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. This is just a link to our website and the application portal, as well as the grant staff contact phone number and email. And then I'm Kayla Carr, I'm the coordinator, and I also manage this program. So you can reach me at 614-221-8569 or by email kcarr@gcac.org. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. And then once again, if we have any questions, I'm happy to go over those now. All right, looking online, there's a line that says updated for 2026. So if the artist is in Franklin County but not in Columbus, yes, exactly. Yes, so you can have residency in Franklin County, but the project still has to be in Columbus. Yeah. So bordering counties are a no altogether. Franklin County, you can live in Franklin County, but project is only Columbus. Cool.
Okay, it was a little confusing. I was like, let me just ask for clarification because we looked
Yeah,
on the zoning and we're like, the dot is on the line. We're like,
yeah,
shoot, what is this? How does this
yeah.
part work? Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. When we were revising guidelines, we definitely reworded that sentence like 5 times. So it's a little
Oh,
tricky
I'm
to
sure.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
so it's a
thank
little
you.
tricky. Like I said, if you need a link to zoning maps or anything, I put that in the chat for everyone. But they also should be linked within the guidelines, I believe. If not, you can just do a quick Google search for those zoning maps. It's very helpful if you're trying to plan events within a certain radius. Thank you, Ken. I'm glad you found this helpful. Conflict of interest. No. So if you are an individual applying for artist projects and you're also involved in a separate project that might be funded by project support, that's totally okay if you're involved with a project support project with a different organization, but the project you're applying for as an individual cannot be the same thing, if that makes sense. So it can't, we don't do any double dipping between our programs. So it's, one project, one grant, one person, if that makes sense. So if you are partnering with a nonprofit organization and they receive funding from us, you can just ask them like, hey, what are you applying GCAC funding to so that you know that there's no double dipping taking place. Thank you, Matthew. I'm glad. Awesome. Cool. Oh, no worries. All right. Looks like someone was typing, but I'm not sure if they're. Okay, I see it again. Good luck, Christian. I'm excited to see your application. I'll give some folks some time to type. Feel free to come off mute too. I'm still recording just so that we have these questions for anyone else, but it's
Can you hear
formal
me?
presentation's over.
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So with that said, um, can you apply for both the organization and artist grant for two separate projects, or do you recommend only applying for one? Because there is a world where in my life, that is like like a viable thing. But
Yeah, no, I'll use Whirlwind Dance Company for an example. One of their founders, Joshua, is a dancer. He got an artist projects grant for his own production, his own dance performance. And then Whirlwind, the nonprofit itself, got funding through project support for the organization's programming. So as long as they're kept separate, it's totally okay to apply for both of them. It should just be clear that artist projects is that individual artist and project support is strictly the organization. The eligibility for each program is different, and you do have to submit different supplemental materials and things like that. But you're totally welcome to apply for both as long as, once again, the funding isn't combined.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Erica. Erica, I feel like I've seen you like 3 days in a row this week because of all of our navigator stuff. So thank you again for coming. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it has been. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. See you. Okay, cool. It looks like that might be all of the questions, I think. We're
I
ending a little bit early, or there one more
Actually, I
person?
did. I was waiting for somebody to finish typing. I thought they had a question, so I didn't want to ask and jump
No,
in
you're
front of
fine.
them, but I think it stopped. I'm not quite sure. Um, so we have somebody who's going to apply on behalf of a group.
Okay.
It's actually a dance group. It is not a nonprofit. Um, so I just wanted to double check the the group is registered. It's an LLC.
Hmm.
Um, and it's under my address, and I do not live in the city of Columbus. But the person that's going to be applying on behalf of us does. Is that still acceptable, or is that not acceptable?
So the person applying is going to be who receives the funds. So if they're not legally attached to the LLC, we wouldn't be able to issue payment to that LLC.
Okay.
Um, but it's totally okay to apply on behalf of the group. It's just that that applying individual has to meet eligibility requirements, and then they'll be in control of receiving payment and issuing it to the rest of your group.
Okay.
So does that make sense? It's not
Yes.
necessarily, okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not
Originally, I was thinking about that because then the person applying would bear the tax
right.
implications, or just the tax activity. So
Mhm.
I want to explain to her that is the case.
Mhm.
But knowing that there'll also be expenses that will offset that income for her, I just want to make sure when I explain um, this to her, she had volunteered. I want to make sure she fully understands the
Yeah,
process. And
yeah,
so just wanted to verify. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Feel free to share this workshop link with her. And if she has specific questions, I can also tap our accounting manager. She deals with all the 1099 stuff, so
Mhm.
we can get some answers there if you need it.
Yes, I know the 1099, like our group, um, it's again under me, and we couldn't do that, so it would be under her. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All
And I
right,
think we're
last,
both gonna attend next Wednesday's grant writing together, so
awesome.
uh, if we have any other questions, we'll double check with you or whomever is there.
Yeah, awesome. I'll be there. We'll have some other navigators. So just come ready with questions and we can help, like we can help with those.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. All right, last question here before we wrap up. Do you have a better chance of funding if you have more artists involved? Not necessarily. I've seen solo projects be funded. Both are acceptable. It's really just how you write the application and who you have, sitting there reviewing it. So you don't want to write to to fit to any specific guideline requirement. You want to write based off of what's clear in your mind and what you're excited about and what you can accomplish. So if you don't typically work with others and you're a solo artist, that's totally okay. I don't want solo artists to feel like they have to involve other people. Maybe it's a solo project and you're just involving like a local printer or a local business or something like that. There's ways to collaborate without having to work with multiple artists. But collaboration is always encouraged at the same time. It's just not necessarily a requirement to apply. So if you're just one individual and you want to work alone, that's totally fine. Does that help answer that question a little bit? Um, it sounds like Darius, I don't know if I'm saying that right. It sounds like you might have some specific questions about what type of projects, so feel free to email me and we can go over those as well. All right, I'm hearing crickets, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that attended.